Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Boss Rush Spotlight podcast, where we highlight some of our favorite creators, developers, and other veterans in the video game industry. I am your host today, Stephanie Klimov, and today I have a fabulous indie dev whose game debuted at Summer Games Fest, specifically Day of the Devs. Welcome, Tanat.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
All right. Well, this is, as I said before we started recording, you're one of the devs I really wanted to get on here and talk about your game. But before we get into that, I don't know if you just want to provide just a short introduction of yourself to the group.
Oh, I was like, your cat just left the room. Like she knew it was like it's work time.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, my cat is making a presence here.
Not anymore. Maybe later. Okay. So, short introduction. My name is Tanat Boozayaangool. I guess I'm an indie developer now. I'm an indie developer from Bangkok, Thailand, and yeah, I make video games. Well, I'm launching my indie debut called Building Relationships. As you said, recently announced at Data Devs. I guess a little short blurb about the game. It's a silly adventure game where you play as a house on a date, and it kind of just goes from there. Yeah, I
Shenanigans
like
ensue.
yes, shenanigans. And I apologize because you asked the question and I immediately blacked out in the middle of it. I was like, "What was the question? Is there anything else other than introductions that I missed?"
No, that's perfect because we'll get into this into specifics when we go through, our back and forth questions, which I've recently up with this portion where I call the icebreaker gauntlet. It's just a bunch of rando questions just to kind of get us in a silly mood and just relax and just get to know you as a person, not just someone who's making video games. So let's start with it's summertime over here. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
My favorite ice cream flavor. I feel like this is like probably the hardest question.
Out of
Maybe in
all of them, yes.
this entire episode. Probably because maybe controversial answer. I don't like ice cream that much. I maybe
Mhm.
have ice cream maybe like 4 times in a year, like once a quarter, and that's like I'm like I don't need more ice cream. Um, Flavors that I
I
like.
I was gonna say you could go with, like, a favorite dessert too. Do you like
Mm,
sweets?
I like sweets. I like sweets. I like favorite dessert like macaron. I really like
Ooh.
overpriced pastries. They do something. They're not they're so expensive, but a nice little treat. Nice little treat. Um, but if I had to pick ice cream, answers are all like vanilla adjacent.
Mm.
So like maybe Earl Grey,
Ooh.
which really is mostly vanilla with like hints of Earl Grey. Um, cookie dough ice cream
Mhm.
type flavor, which is mostly vanilla.
Right.
Something with like salted caramel, which is
Mm.
mostly vanilla plus something else. So I'm a little boring, but not
No,
that
not
boring.
I was gonna say, no, you're not full basic, and I actually am very similar. If I do have ice cream, it is, like, cookies and cream, which is just vanilla with bits of, like, Oreo, or cookie dough, and there's one, I don't know, we come up with a bunch of, like, crazy names, but it's basically a sugar waffle cone ice cream, which is just vanilla with waffle cone crunched up in there. Um,
That's just like we already have a product. Let's put that in the ice cream too.
exactly, and charge it like $8 a pint. Exactly. Maybe I should have invented that. I don't know, but back to high priced but awesome desserts. Macarons are just so awesome. There's a little stand at the local mall where they sell them, and it just gets me every time. The cute little packaging, the cute little designs, the colors, and it's just so good.
So good and so hard to make. So it's like one of those things that like cookies, you can make them.
Yes.
Macarons, impossible. Might as well
Yeah.
just spend five
Leave it to the
dollars and
experts, right?
yeah.
All right. How about coffee or tea? Do you have a preference for caffeinated beverage?
I like both. I like both. I after going to university, it's hard to
Mhm.
exist without caffeine. So it's coffee picked up there. I used to work as a barista too in like high school, but right now I'm in the UK. I'm in the UK for like the next month, 2 months. So it's like I've been here for 2.5 years, and it's converted me. I love tea, but specific times. Like after dinner, I'd be like, I could go for a cup of tea right now. And
Mhm.
my brain
I was gonna
chemistry has been
say,
altered.
yeah, for types of tea, like I guess, tea can be enjoyed in many different ways throughout the world. I grew up with tea at my household almost on a daily basis, but it was green tea or oolong tea as is with water. So everyone's like, you want milk or sugar with that? I'm like, no, I don't.
That's I oolong tea. Oolong tea is one of my favorite. Green tea, green
Yeah.
tea. I
Mhm.
I love green tea as well. Oolong is like my go-to. If I drink a lot of bubble tea as well, so
Yes.
oolong is, but that is like not tea. It's milk and sugar with a hint of tea.
Mhm.
But I love it.
Awesome. Oh, yay. When I say oolong to most of my friends, they're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "It's a good tea. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
Anyway, steering slightly towards on topic, do you personally have a favorite video game or video game franchise?
Ooh, favorite video game. A lot of like the video game franchise. I grew up with a lot of like the Nintendo games.
Mhm.
I grew up in Thailand, and not every console was like popular in Thailand. It was mostly like PlayStation was big. GameCube is not really there, but the Wii, that's when
Okay.
the Nintendo kind of had a chokehold on the whole country, and the whole world really. So a lot of those like early titles, but I like I also play lots of indie games. I would say some of my favorites probably be something like This War of Mine. It's
Mhm.
a game from a while ago where it's like set in a wartime, but you play instead of playing as like a soldier in the war, you play as like a war survivor, trying to manage this colony or like this group of people. And it's one of the first game that I saw that was like I guess something different, like doing storytelling through like the whole mechanics as well, like the way that like there's no like hunger bar for each character, right? It's just like this person is starving, or this person is starving a lot, or this
Mhm.
person is at the edge of death. Like that's the the like the different ways that they all kind of come together. I was like, oh wow, this is an experience that I didn't expect I could feel from games, because
Mhm.
I skip all the dialogue. Uh, so I never like get engaged in the story that way. Um,
Huh.
and another game that is kind of like part of my formative indie game would be Celeste. Celeste has such like
Mm.
amazing platforming. Um, Movement feels so smooth, and the game design, like a lot of things, like very forgiving in terms of if you slightly almost hit the spike, it kind of like, oh, we kind of like give you a little pat. Kind of give you a little pat on the back, like give you a little pass. There's like a lot of very small things that are done right in Celeste that kind of makes it a very cohesive experience, and the story is really good, and the music, and like, oh, it's just so.
Oh yeah. A lot. I'm a big fan of Celeste, and just to say in general with indie games, I mean, back when I was very uncultured and only was familiar with the big three, so to speak, my favorite games, and I mean, it still is like I'm a Zelda fan, big Zelda fan, and I don't know other major titles. I recently kind of discovered indie games once I joined Boss Rush a couple years back, and I've grown to appreciate so many titles, especially Celeste and a lot of the early ones too, because they were innovative with gameplay and they showed a lot of care and attention to detail for certain things like that, which can really make a huge difference in the player experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like so, it's like a lot of the games are much smaller in scope, so you can really see all the details everywhere.
Hmm.
So yeah, what are your favorite indie games?
Ooh, indie games. So
Or
one of the first one that comes to mind, and they're not in any particular order, but I love Gree.
okay,
Gree is
I
fantastic. I know that studio is working on another game That's and I there's so many things in my mind. I forgive me for not remembering what that title is, but I know one's coming out. What Remains of Edith Finch was one that I liked. And let's see, Smooshy Come Home. I
Mhm.
love At Some Humble Onion. He's great. We got to meet him at PAX East last year, and I've been kind of following him, and I got to play his game. Absolutely adorable. It's a fun little adventure. I did feel like a tiny, cute mushroom in a big world, and the dialogue is what kind of really kept me too. The dialogue's really, really funny.
Yeah, Smooshy, I feel like is there's a category of indie games that there isn't like a good word for, but like tiny little exploration game, like Tiny Terry Turbo's Adventure or whatever the
Mm,
name is called that just came out. Game like Smooshy Mail Time.
mhm.
I met a developer of Mail Time earlier this year. Like A Short Hike was kind of like the first game that has that
Yes.
kind of
Mhm.
genre of like small open world, explore, move around. So yeah, really cool. Also, Gris, I guess Gree. I oops, Gree. Like it's the game that like I is on my list. I need to play it. I bought the game and haven't played it yet, but it's like art friend like who is not into game was like, have you heard this game before? Have you heard this game? Um,
Yes.
Such
Yes.
so striking. And yeah, what
Oh.
became of Edith Finch? I remember there were like earlier talks about like the rigging, the animation, whatnot, the way like a lot of the faces are hidden because of lip syncing is very difficult. Um, Not like finger movement. That's when I like can learn like, oh, a lot of the tech art, the rigging side of things. As one person who worked on the tech art was giving a talk at like an event I went to when I was in university,
Okay.
and I was like, wow, learning a lot from this game. It's just like the scope of like 3D crazy, like
Yeah.
no, I guess not crazy, but 3D human animation rigging, all those like there's the game scales become a lot bigger in terms of the
Mhm.
technical side. But yeah, I'm just rambling. Sorry.
No, no, this is great. It's great to get your point of view for someone who's developing a game versus someone who just plays them. I do want to give one more shout out to just the entire a publisher developer, and that's Toge Productions. Is it Productions? I know they're Toge. I love them. I love the games they put out. I played Coffee Talk 1 and 2. I know they're working on Kriegsfront or
Mhm.
something, and then also Outbreak at Whisper. Oh my goodness. I'm like, anyway, Coffee Talk is just, and A Space for the Unbound is
Yeah,
really,
because it was a Spaceman Around was Mohican, but since they've joined
oh yeah.
together,
Yes.
it's now Toge. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So I'm a big fan of their games. So shout out to
yeah.
them. We just had someone on the team join us on a book club to discuss the game Stray, which I don't know if some people might consider that indie, some might not, just because they went through Annapurna. I don't know what you think, but
I don't know. I think it's just like there's it's a hot topic because lots of people feel lots of different things about it. It's just that like indie is a marketing term. I
yeah.
think most people who are in the indie sphere are kind of like indie. There's a side of indie that is not commercial that most players don't see, and like indie developers see it because you go to like these events, and suddenly you see all these other games, art house games, like weird artsy stuff that they don't play to the Steam algorithm. They don't spend all this time like marketing the game because that's not what they're into. That's not what they're all about. And there's like a wide world of indie, and that's what a lot of people like more purists like consider indie to be like that space. But it's there's also most people indie who are commercial kind of understand that, and we're just
Mm,
like it is what it is. It's like we're not like I don't know. It's indie and commercial is still different from like corporate setting. So
yeah. And yeah, I just want to make sure I got it right. It says Whisper Mountain Outbreak, which that's to be released still. So but,
yeah,
yeah, no, and that's definitely a hot topic for sure. I know I am certainly not the one to provide the definition of what makes indie and what's not. I think my only pet peeve would just be like if there's a company, not that I can say that there's a particular one, but if they're using the term indie just to get sales or clicks. But
And excellent. Dave Diver, my favorite indie game. Uh, I think that like there's arguments to be had. There's people do have the valid opinions we should listen to and you should respect. But also, I love drama, and I think that when you argue about stuff on Twitter, it's like at a certain point, it's not real. So
it becomes more
Dave
funny
Diver,
than serious.
it gets more funny and serious. So Dave Diver, my favorite indie game, should have won indie game award,
Oh,
whatever. Absolutely. But also, Toge, love the games. It was one of like the first few games because I lived in the West for a very long time. I'm from Thailand, from Southeast Asia. I remember seeing Coffee Talk. I remember seeing like games from Toge. Like, oh wow, there's a games community from like a pretty big indie presence from Southeast Asia. So it's
hmm
like one of the first things I saw, and it's like okay, it's not just there's just other people out there that for people in Southeast Asia, we don't always like identify with people. I can't speak to everyone, but
hmm
with people from like East Asia, where I would see like 'cause there's a lot of representation from like Japan, for example, within the gaming presence, um, but in Korea as well, like MMORPGs and whatnot, but less so in Southeast Asia. So it's like we are neighbors, but it's easier to identify with other Southeast Asian people. The cultures are more similar compared
Yep.
to with East Asian people. So it was very like very
Mm,
validating, very inspiring to see like as like a younger like student, kind of like freshly graduated, seeing Toge and seeing like oh all these other games, just like okay, there's space here, especially like a space for the Unbound, very like authentically like attached to its culture. Um,
yes.
it's like like Persona, but not Japan.
Right. It's nice to see other cultures being represented. Again, not that I care more of one or the other, but it's just nice to see ones that aren't as represented. Um, how do I say this? Like, I don't know. It's also like when people talk about mythology in books or shows and movies, we see Greek mythology all the time, Egyptian mythology all the time. I want to see something with indigenous Native American mythology, or I don't know, something different. So it's very refreshing. And you have to forgive me. I really think that there's a black hole in my brain where all of a sudden I just can't remember any video game names, maybe other than yours right now. But there's a game that just came out. It's wish listed. I do plan on buying it and playing it. It's also an indie game. I think it's set in the Philippines.
Until then,
Yes. Yes. So like that immediately I was like, click, I'm gonna play
yep,
that.
a space for the Unbound, but in Philippines.
Yeah.
I hope they don't like come for me, don't at me.
We
But
mean
no,
it
no.
in the best way, and then once I play it, we'll be able to talk about the differences.
Yes, yes.
There you go. We mean it with love. Speaking of love, do you have, and I know this is a busy year for you working on your game, but if you've been playing games, what is your most anticipated video game for 2024?
Ooh, this is also a very difficult question. Anticipated game. Um, one like that kind of stuck with me, especially from Steam Next Fest.
Mm.
That I because I played a bunch during on June. It's Thank Goodness You're Here. Thank you because it's very British.
Ooh, okay.
But it's just like a slapstick comedy, and basically you just go around slapping people and you just jump around and slap people, and it's just he plays a tiny little guy who's I guess the new mayor in town, and
Okay.
it when I watched the trailer I thought it was like a cartoon like series or something.
Oh, that's
It
awesome.
kind of looks like a cartoon, but you play as this character, and it just goes through different scenarios, and different people just say like very like British things, very deadpan.
Mm. Ooh,
I guess
okay.
like dry humor almost.
Mm.
But it's just it's very funny to me, and it's demos are I don't like playing demos that much.
Mhm.
So that was one that I was like, okay, this is cool. It's just like I'm enjoying this. Crush House is another one that I'm looking forward
Hmm.
to a lot. Big fan. I like reality TV, like something based around reality TV is something I like wanted to make. But they were making it. I was like, oh, perfect. I don't have to,
Hmm.
someone
Yeah.
else is trying. I don't have to try to like figure out and navigate all the game design problems, issues to tell the story. Um, Very excited about that. Um, yeah, those are like the two in my mind right now. I feel like there should be more games. I can't, I'm, I can't pick one. But click holding was another one that just kind of came out of nowhere. Strange Scaffold. They make a lot of games.
Hmm.
Recently, like Xalavier, who's working on I Am Your Beast. I Am Your Beast was pretty big in the June Next Fest. But they kind of
Hmm.
just announced. They're going to make click holding, which is weird. I don't know what it's about, but you kind of have a clicker in the game. It just increments, and it's like a dark hotel room, and there's a guy wearing a mask, and it's this dark room just looking at you, and it's like telling you to click the game, and then it click the clicker, and at some point pulls out a gun. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I want to find out.
Okay. Nice. And what's that name earlier where you go around slapping people? Because I just kind of want to play it.
Thank goodness you're here.
Thank goodness you're here. I'm gonna write it down, and it looks terrible in the notes, but I'm gonna write it down because that sounds awesome.
It's a good time. It's a good time.
Nice. Yeah, I have a few I bought but didn't have a chance to start yet. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. In general, I love Annapurna and Devolver games.
It's
This is gonna.
Lorelei Laser Eye is
Mhm.
so good. I played
It
it
is.
on a train ride back. It's one of those games like if you have a pen and paper, it helps.
Uh, okay.
But like escape room type puzzle, but also there's lots of little things they do to make you feel smart.
Mm.
Because like the puzzles are hard, but it's not too impossible. Most of them, at least, I did have to look something up toward the end. I kind of got tired and annoyed. But it does such a good job at making you feel like, oh, I'm so stupid, and like, oh, I'm so smart. I'm the smartest person in the world. So, and then 5 minutes later, oh, I'm so stupid. This puzzle is beyond me, and it's like, oh, I'm so smart. Like,
Oh,
just
perfect.
that,
It's
like
it's like being in a terrible relationship. Awesome.
that, but not in a bad way.
No, no, I got you. No, good. Well, yeah, I can't wait. Other ones, the two bigger titles is Black Myth Wukong, because I just remember hearing about that mythology growing up from my mom. And then, of course, the new Zelda game where you finally get to play as Zelda herself, so Echoes of Wisdom. I did finally recall or look up the name. Neva is the new game that's coming out from the makers of Gree. So very similar art style, and it just looks absolutely gorgeous. And then another one is Fallen Aces. Fallen Aces, I believe, is out on early access. It not my usual type of game because like first person, not a shooter, but first person beat the crap out of people. But I just really love their noir comic book art style. So, and I got to check them out at PAX this year. So, you know, looking forward to checking it out. But there's a lot more, but those are kind of a little bit of kind of what I was looking forward to this year. And then, so much for being an icebreaker. This could be our entire interview. Do you have your own video game hot take? Do you have any hot takes?
Ooh, hot takes. I guess we like mentioned a little bit at the start, right? About like
Mm.
what's indie, what's not indie.
Okay. Yep.
Um, Video game hot take. I think games. One that's kind of in my head. It's like I think games can be a little bit bad, and that's okay. Like I I I like it when games. I don't mind if the game is like a little bit bad, but only like specific ways. I think I don't know. I think
No,
that
I get what you're saying because I don't know what's going on with the gaming quote unquote community where they find one thing they just don't like about it or is not good about it. They just trash it horribly. I'm like, well, okay, sure. I don't know.
I feel like it's one of those things. Like I don't know if you've ever like judged, being on like a judging panel or had to like give a score to give grades to people, where you kind
Mm.
of, it's easy to come in with like a certain preconception, misconception, and whenever you find any kind of reason to attribute it to, you're like, you, this is the reason, this is correct, this is what I feel. So if you, there's something kind of in the back of your head that says this game is not what my, not my kind of game, something is off, and you know, usually can't identify why, but the first thing that's obvious, that's usually is what people latch onto, because it's easier to do that implicitly compared to doing like, you know, critical analysis or whatnot. It's just like how the brain works.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a lot of that. I don't know. Not the target audience, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Well, thank you for that. It was a lot of fun. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about just your journey as a developer and then the game itself, building relationships. So, when did you start developing games? I believe, looking at your website that you've had made some fun and silly games prior to building relationships. And what got you into game development?
Yeah. So I started making video games when I went to university. I actually went to school for game design and development. So I studied my bachelor's in America, in upstate New York, in Rochester, middle of nowhere, in RIT. Went to the game design program there, and that's where I got my bearings, learned how to code, picked up game design skills. Um, and then I, after graduating, I got a job in tech, and so that didn't really have a lot to do with gaming, um, but I kind of started doing, picking up game development again on the side during 2020. Suddenly had more free time then. I don't remember what happened, um, and it's been on and off part-time work as I kind of moved from the US to the UK. Um,
Mm,
and now as like as of last October, that's when I like I was like, okay, let me put building relationships out there. It and I guess I can talk a bit more, but that's when the game development work started picking up, and it became
mhm.
like, okay, um, part-time work, but let's put a little more focus into this.
Right.
And I guess I like quit uh, quit my day job. I think this is airing. By the time this airs, would have been like a couple weeks now since my last day. So yeah, I that's I guess now technically unemployed, but kind of working on video games. Yeah. And in terms of building relationships, that was a game that I worked on, I conceptualized in back in 2015. So I was a freshman in university, freshman for people not in America, first year student. Um, and we were doing a game jam called a 4 hour jam, which is like weekly 4 hours, do something. Um, and the theme was construction destruction. So I was like, okay, make like a building game, or I can make like, oh, maybe like a relationships type game. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, what if I do both? And so yeah, that's where the idea started. I barely knew how to program, but games that are like kind of visual novel dating sim type games were in my head, like Hatafu Boyfriend, which is where you play as
Mm,
pigeon, or play as the one woman in this world where everyone's a pigeon, in school, of course. Um, and that's that's how the idea started. But I don't really consume visual novels or dating sims, so I couldn't really make something in that genre because I don't consume that media.
mm,
Um, and so in lockdown, during 2020, it was a git jam. I was starting doing jams again. I joined this one called Unexpected Jam. So I was like, oh, this is a perfect time to bring back building relationships
mm,
in a different format. I had just played a short hike, and so that was fresh in my mind. I want to play around with the exploration as like a mechanic because that just felt so fun to me. It was kind of like fun to create, and this how the game kind of found its footing from like, oh, what if it's a short hike but like stupid. Uh, so yeah, in then last year was when I thought I would just port the Jam version on Steam directly.
mm,
Um, But I thought, what if I redid this part? What if we do that? I redo this, I redo this, and I redo the whole game basically. And now I'm like, okay, what if I have to add localization,
Hmm.
figure out porting, real music. There's a lot of stuff now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but that's amazing. I didn't know that concept. I mean, that's well over, hold on, I can do math here. Just under 10 years, right? That's
Yeah,
almost a
I think
decade that it's been.
because the
That's
game's coming
awesome.
out next year, it will be like 10 years from concept to release, which it's not really like a I spent 10 years making this video game, but people love to put that on like a YouTube thumbnail, and I am definitely going to. I
I
spent
was gonna
10
say
years.
you have to and make like, I don't know, a house plushie or something, please.
Yeah, I'll that house thing in my background is like
I love
10
it. I'm
year
like,
development.
that's amazing. Awesome.
Thank
Well, going along with your studio's philosophy, you talked about it already, but if you can expand more on it, just because I don't see too many, sorry, words are hard, developers that like to go so lighthearted to the point where they have no problem making light or fun of themselves or the game. Just for the audience, the studio's philosophy is there's a joy in absurdity, suspending all levels of disbelief and immersing yourself in the wildest world. And there you'll find the most human story, anchoring the most ridiculous narrative. It is a different take on what you might think as surreal. It's something that feels subversive yet grounded. That's the kind of games we make.
it I wrote that and I was like, am I is this is writing what am I don't really know. Is this too um what's the word,
Abstract or?
pretentious, too
Uh-huh.
abstract? Yeah, but
Mm,
yeah, it's I can talk a little more about that. It's just something that like the surrealness of it all, something that just draws me into it.
mhm,
Something that's a little bit, I guess, a little bit weird. But when things are like the metaphors are too layered, things that don't necessarily have like an anchored answer, um, I tend to get a little bit lost in the like art of it. So it's something that like has like I guess the meaning of it all is a little bit more discernible. Um, Things that like it's easier to understand the metaphors, the kind of ideas
mhm,
behind it. That's like what I really it's where I like to kind of play around. But some of the influences within that kind of like this area that I kind of draw from things like comedy. So outside of games, like improv comedy. There's I think like I my eyes kind of got open to how like even within a genre of comedy, you can have moments of like very real, very grounded, very realistic characters, very vulnerable moments, and that doesn't
mhm.
take away from
Yeah.
the comedy of it all. So there's this platform called Dropout. It used to be College Humor. So College Humor people they started their own like streaming platform and have a bunch of shows or like they bring all these improv artists or comedians and they play I guess like improv games that are spun into like a TV show basically.
Mhm,
So there's lots of play there that really inspired in terms of they have very realistic, very vulnerable characters in the middle of their improv sketch, and
mhm.
then something absurd happens and it creates a funny moment, right?
Yep.
That's something that really like clicked in my head, and I want to play in a very similar area.
Nice. I do feel like there's something to be said about creating a quote unquote silly or ridiculous concept, so to speak, but yet have, I don't know if serious is the right word, but meaningful messages behind it. Sometimes some of us have a hard time playing a game that hits too close to home or is too hyper realistic, right? So, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to read the Steam description of the game for everybody. For those that haven't tuned in to Day of the Devs, you definitely should, and Wholesome Games as well. Roll, jump, and wave dash as a house on a date in this silly adventure game. Meet eccentric structures, romance eligible bachelor pads, and uncover the meaning of life. Or you could just go fishing instead, which I love. Though it was replaced with, sorry, fish were replaced with cars to make more sense.
Just makes sense.
I love it. I love it. I was rewatching the trailer prior to hopping on this call with you, how would you explain traversal? Because it seems like you can travel pretty fast and kind of free flowing, right?
Yeah, the traversal, that's pretty much like the first thing that I made in the game.
Hmm.
I knew like there was I remember seeing tweets within the game developer um, Discourse sphere. One of them mentioned how games, even if they're not platforming games or movement based games, they should still have fun movement. So this person was citing Night in the Woods. So Night in the Woods, you can do
Oh,
jumps, and if you do three jumps in a row, you do like a triple jump, and you can
yeah.
reach different areas basically, and you can find puzzles and like not puzzle, find hidden secrets here and there. Um, so that was one of like the guiding, I guess, philosophy, but like things I
Mm,
wanted to make sure the game has. And I guess I knew I wanted some kind of like dash component because Celeste, I love dashing. It just feels fun. um,
yeah.
yeah, how would I describe the movement? uh I don't know. It's exactly how a house would move. Realistic building physics. uh it's how I imagine, as I'm not a homeowner, so these are all things that I'm pretty sure this is as an aspiring homeowner,
Yes, it's like that's
that's
the kind of house I want. It just flies. Love it.
absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Now, the dating aspect, are there a wide variety of romance options? Can you influence kind of an ending, so to speak, based on those romance options?
Yeah. The dating side of things, that's is one of the things where I kind of have to make sure I don't go too far, too wide in, because it's it gets there's a lot of writing to
Mm,
do. A lot of dating sims. Sometimes they have characters where like they don't like you pick one character and they don't really interact with one another. Right? It's like six separate storylines. Um, and then you can kind of separate all the workload that way. And as long as it has a coherent world, um, it's easier to okay, build this character out, build this character out, build this character out. Um, and like the game isn't really, I didn't approach it as from like a dating sim. The dating sim aspect isn't something that is very integral to what the game is. So there's a limit to the amount of characters. I think there's like two or three currently that I have
mhm,
planned for. Um, I really want to add a fourth character you can date, but it's a lot of work.
mhm.
Um, and because I want to make
Maybe
sure all these
DLC.
characters DLC, that is the plan. I really want more characters to show up.
Mhm,
But I really want all these characters to be able to like interact with each other through like story moments. Oh, the kitty's back.
mhm. Yeah,
Um,
Kitty's back.
Aw, uh, ready to step on all the keyboards and stop the
Yes.
interview. Um, but I really wanted the characters to be able to kind of interact with one another. So that's why I can't have too many characters. The game is also a short game. I can get into that a little bit more later. But as like a first game, um, indie games is not easy, and I am one of like the lucky people who got picked up by data devs, because without it being part of Summer Games, with it being part of data devs, it would have been much harder to kind of get people to know about the game, because the Steam page has been up since October, and I make tweets, post TikToks and whatnot, and it was hovering around like 200 Steam wish lists. And then data devs went straight up to like 15K after over 2 weeks. So
Oh my
like
gosh, that's crazy.
wild. And it's just like it's nothing really has changed about the game, but it's just like marketing is just
Mm,
difficult. And it a lot of time, that's why within the indie, like starting out, that the tip is to start small, make something very tiny, just because in case the marketing machine does not work out, you're not at a huge loss. It's something manageable. So that was
Right.
a plan from the start. So that's why there are not too many people to date. Not too many people. There are no people to date. No, not many structures to date in the game. Um,
Mhm.
and but I really want to make sure that within these few options to make sure that there's lots of dialogue options that
Mhm.
create lots of fun moments. But yeah,
All right. Wow. Okay. Um, so why a fishing mini game?
why not?
I love it.
There's I know I mentioned a tweet about the movement. There was also another tweet. I don't remember who said this, but all good games require a fishing mini game. I don't remember if it was a tweet. It might have been like a YouTube video, like a little bit here and there. Um, and but that's just true. You know, hot take
It is.
number 7 at this point. If your game doesn't have a fishing mini game, is it good?
Mhm. Well, that's why I asked because I've heard of that saying before, and the fact that you added one in just is like almost like that fourth wall, like, hey, we all know fishing games are kind of the thing, but then you also changed it up. It's actually you're fishing for cars, so it just I don't know adds a bit of uniqueness to it. So if you need to take a break from adventuring or romancing, you can just chill, man, by the lake or the river.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I knew a fishing minigame was going to be in there, and because I made it as part of Unexpected Jam,
Mhm.
I was like, okay, the fish can't be fish. It just there has to be another edge to this. Like,
Yeah.
okay, house, like the multiple layers. So, oh, we place the house. Oh, the house can go fishing. Of course. I was like, oh, wait a
Mhm.
minute, the fish is actually cars. Um, and it's very funny. Like the reason why I chose cars is because um, the game, most of the assets in the games is from a free asset pack. So from Kenny Assets, and I used a different texture from another website. Basically, I kind of combined them together. And he has a pack for buildings,
Mhm.
and he has another pack for vehicles. And so I was like, okay, my answer is my answer is here. Fish is cars because
That's extremely efficient, but it also works because I'm thinking, oh, you need a fish for a car for your garage. Here, my little simpleton brain thinks that way.
no, yeah, yeah. It's just like there's an answer there. There's like I guess in universe explanation, and it's one of those things that like if you can kind of like people like have this like there's this idea where people have a limit of like how many times they can ask why, and then they kind of get tired of like oh sure.
Mhm.
So you know, it, like why cars, and they're like oh because cars, garage, house, fish makes sense.
Mhm.
Like, oh, okay, explanation done.
Exactly. Never question it again.
Yes, it's like that makes sense to
Mm.
me.
So, I know you'd mentioned it being a relatively short game. What's kind of your expected time to beat for most players?
Yeah, I think a lot like exploration, the going through the story. Um, I'm trying to aim for like a 2 hour experience.
Hmm.
Try to hit
Hmm.
that. 100% in the game would take more than 2 hours, just because there's lots of secrets here and there.
Ooh,
I kind
okay.
of just looked from the demo. The demo is not a lot of the game, but like a pretty big chunk already. Um, and people if you do just the story beat in the demo, I think it'll take around like 15 minutes.
Mhm.
But seeing everything to do in the demo, I've seen people take from 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Um, so and the demo, I'm kind of earmarking as like a third of the game,
Okay.
um, less than a third, but not necessarily up to like because it's weighted a little bit different. A lot of story, it's not in the demo, but quite a bit of exploration is already there. Um, so yeah, I'm aiming for 2 hour mark. Yeah.
Nice. Since you brought up the demo, which everyone should try out on Steam, uh, um, have you been able, I don't know how this works, so forgive my ignorance. Were you able to get feedback from players who tried out the demo? And what was that experience like? Were you nervous?
Oh yeah, there are people who on Steam you can kind of comment in like the discussion board whatnot. There have been people who stream a demo. So there were like this is the demo. There were lots of fixes that I like. Some of the input was a bit janky. That it took me a minute to figure out what was going on there. But just kind of seeing how players navigate through the level, lots of like game design, level design notes that I took of just like, okay, this part players got stuck. This part, you can't. They couldn't find this here. The
Mhm.
dialogue, people really like the dialogue. Like it's one of those things that like a lot of the writing, a lot of the concept of the game is very it is very fun to like stream. It just kind of works for a streaming environment. Like you start with this ridiculous concept, and then people in chat are like, "Oh, what's going on?" And then like they start questioning like, "Oh, are there like people in the houses? Oh, is it?" They start coming with their own puns. It's just like, "Oh, I bet there's gonna be like House who's a doctor, like Doctor House or something."
Oh my
Um,
gosh, yes.
just like those kind of things, and it's very fun. It's very cool for me to see. Like I've kind of created like a world, and the concept is simple enough that it kind of just draws people in, and people
Mhm.
just kind of start trying like making guesses, and it almost feels like they're also part of the world. Almost
Yeah.
they're part of the world creation, trying to like play guess and like figure things out, and it's just really cool.
Yeah,
It's
now you're gonna have fans that are making their own lore and will soon expect you to be publishing timelines and stuff, so be careful.
oh no. I, I will make the most convoluted nonsense.
Yes, please do that.
It will not make any sense, but I hope someone out there is defending it with all their honor, even if I'm not going to defend it.
I'll be the one on the hill for your game, dying on a hill for whatever it stands for.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So I guess as we kind of slowly wrap this up, what are at least what you can tell me your next steps for completing the development of this game? Are you going to be attending? I think there's like either Gamescom, PAX West. Is there other places that you'll be visiting? Tell us what's next.
Yeah, what's next for me is moving back home because I will be working on this full time. I am
Yeah.
in the UK, but I'm not British, thankfully. Uh, I, I I'll be moving back home just because all the like visa situation, business side of things is a little bit easier to manage there
Hmm.
than trying to switch visas and stay here. Much cheaper too, a lot less risky in terms of business side. Um,
Hmm.
and so PAX West and Gamescom is around the time that I'm moving,
Oh,
and
okay.
so I can't go to either. But I there's places I've submitted to that I'm still waiting for responses on. But I don't know, a lot of like when much smaller indies usually it's they things are online are much more appreciated because it's a lot less work for the indie, and because
Mm,
it's just me at the moment with a composer, um, uh, and who is working on the music, and that's it, right? And I am doing everything else. So
yeah.
it's yeah, less likely to be in places, but I'm aiming for a Steam Next Fest on October. Um,
October. Okay.
yep, and hoping to release next year, but pending all the timeline how that looks, um, we'll see how it goes.
All right. Excellent. Um, my last question, you kind of answered already, but you're welcome to reiterate it. Like, any words of wisdom for any aspiring devs?
Ooh, where to listing aspiring dev? I think that there's like solo dev is I don't another hot take. I don't solo dev. Who cares? No one cares. As someone who is also a solo dev, although I would say there are people who take pride in being solo, and props to them. I don't think that I should be like who cares about you? Because there's a different side to being a solo dev. But the marketing solo devs people, eh, I don't, that's not, I don't know. Anyways, unrelated, big pile to unpack there. But uh, I started out. I don't really know a lot about within the indie sphere. Try to figure out all the processes. Try to figure out like what am I supposed to go do? What do I need? How do I figure out what to do next? Like, okay, how do I go from point A to point B? I hear all these like tips, but am I? Is this a reflection of me following said tips? I would say that um, the community, the indie dev community, is something that's just it's awesome. There's lots of people out there, all from like different walks of life, and they're all like kind of understand the struggle, the grind, the trouble, how hard it is to make video games. And I said this to a friend the other day. It's the like immediate shared trauma of making video games.
Mm.
Making videos fun, yay, but also deeply traumatic. And so there's a lot of people, a lot of indies out there have processed that trauma, or maybe they're still processing it. But
It takes time.
yes, they're aware of it, and so it's very like when you go through like a traumatic process with a friend, you just become closer that way.
Yep.
That's kind of why it's easy to like click at a certain at some level with lots of indies out there. I'm just like, yeah, this this
Mhm.
it's fun and it's horrible at the same time. So point is to say that the networking side of things, the meeting people, getting information, getting tips, like I I'm solo, but I learned a lot from so many people, like trying to figure out the Steam algorithm, trying to copy and steal what other people do to just kind of make it work for me. Figuring out what TikTok numbers mean, like is this engagement good engagement? What do I care? What should I look for that is pointing me towards a certain direction? Um, there's a lot to figure out. Like recently, localization. I just kind of tweeted out, and lots of people gave me lots of information of like, okay, this is what you should think about, what you should not think about, etc.
Very nice. It's not the same, very much not the same, but coming from a small, very small podcast website community, I feel like when I talk to indie devs and other indie publications, it's like, you know what? If we all support each other, we'll all succeed together. That's a bit more
Oh
of a
yeah,
mushy way to say it.
no, absolutely. The how hard marketing is, like people kind of understand. Just like, yep, there's a lot of effort that consumers don't see, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's when you're part of it, it's very easy to see like, yeah, how much work anything takes.
Yeah, so, thank you for that. And with that being said, again, building relationships is listed on Steam. If you haven't already, please wish list it. We've already explained how important wish listing is, and there's a demo to try. So, a very, very hearty demo. Please give it a shot. Um, Tanat, before I do my housekeeping, tell us where our audience can find you.
Yeah, I am on Twitter, at t to not b dot no, just at t to not b, um, and that's usually where I shit post the most. And then Instagram is a different thing. Like I am, my marketing is Instagram is to not potato. I have like there's a there's like 10 Ant Games account on most platforms except for Instagram because I could not make another Instagram account. Uh, and when I try
There's
to
no.
create more account, I think my IP is in their list. Somehow I keep getting auto banned. The moment I create any Instagram account, something is going on there, and I don't have the
You've
energy to
been
figure it out.
blacklisted.
I, I'm in an auto ban list. I don't know how.
Oh,
Um,
no.
but TikTok, I'm on there. YouTube, maybe we'll see.
Okay.
Now that I am have free time. I don't have free time, but but
I
yeah.
get what you mean, though. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll also put all of that in the show notes as well. So if people do want to follow your progress, they'll be able to. And here comes I shouldn't call it boring stuff because then Corey will yell at me. But some housekeeping before we wrap up. If you want to support the Boss Rush podcast and the Boss Rush Network, you can join it. Oh, excuse me. Our Patreon at patreon.com/Boss Rush Network at a tier that's right for you, earning you perks such as early ad-free access to this and other podcasts, exclusive access to spotlight interview access threads, voting rights on Video Game Book Club, and more. That's patreon.com/Boss Rush Network. But as always, your listenership and viewership is always enough for us. If you're watching the video on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and leave a thumbs up or a comment if you so wish. If you're listening on podcast services like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a review. Lastly, check out our merch on TeePublic with over 50 designs, thanks to Corey, to represent your favorite shows and more. As always, you could check out all our content, reviews, articles, and more on bossrush.net. I wasn't ready. I should have taken a sip of tea before I did that long rant. Anyway, Tanat, cheers. Thank you so much for your time. I had a blast. We'll be in touch. We'd be happy to talk up your game, and I'm personally looking forward to playing it as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I had a great time. Lots of rambling, but I love to ramble.
Rambling is great.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/Boss Rush Network. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.